All right, what is up, YouTube? Hope everybody's having a great day. Hope y'all had a great weekend. For those who are veterans, today is Veterans Day, so thank you so much for your service as a fellow veteran. I hope you all attack Applebee's with the same ferocity that you attack the VA parking lot, because we're crazy sometimes. And also for my fellow Marines, happy birthday. Yesterday was Marine Corps birthday. 249 looks beautiful on us. And for those who are watching in the future, well, it's November. I hope you all are enjoying whatever time of year it is. So today is the third installment of basically Music Mondays, where we talk about all things music production and music theory related, and we'll also get into some guitar techniques as this course progresses. But today, the biggest thing we're going to talk about is the major scale. I'm also briefly going to touch over modes just to open them up to you so you understand what they are. But we're not going to really dive into that today. We'll have a whole separate day, probably each lesson dedicated to a mode, so we can really spend some time and understand them. Real quick, some of the questions I've been getting on the live streams are like, if I study scales, can I solo? Or I'm trying to learn how to get better at soloing. Should I learn all these scales? And my answer to you is yes and no. It's not like you learn one scale and you're like, all of a sudden I can solo. It just doesn't work that way. I would practice doing melodic exercises, so practicing kind of like vocal runs and replicating how a singer sings, at least for the style of music that I enjoy writing and playing. Whatever you're trying to do is different. You just need to really know your genre. But I believe scales, especially if you only know one scale, the one scale that I hope you really know inside and out is the major scale, and that's what we're going to dive into today. Because understanding how scales are made will help you learn how chords are made. Like, this is basically the backbone of Western music. So let's get into it. Real quick, what you see here on the board, this is what we call the chromatic scale. So this is basically every note available to us in Western music. And I keep saying Western music because there are things like microtonals and Eastern music. Like, if you ever study the sitar is a very fascinating instrument because its tuning can always change infinitely. But for the sake of just consistency, just assume everything that I'm talking about is like what you would learn in music school here in the United States or in Europe. Got my coffee. We're ready to go. All right, so the chromatic scale, the thing we need to keep in mind is what's called a half step and a whole step. So we're going to put this in guitar terms. A half step is 1 fret. A whole step is 2 frets. So for example, the open low string is an E. If I were to put my finger on the first fret where I'm at F, that is only a half step interval. However, if I go from E to F sharp, that is 2 frets, therefore that is 2 whole steps. So this is important because when we learn how to build our major scale, there is a formula by which we follow. And the formula is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. All right, and I drew it like this for a reason. This is what we call a tetrachord. Tetrachord. Now, I'm not going to get into a history of music lesson in today's lecture, but if this is something that you're interested in, you can look up this instrument, and this is basically the building block for all music, and I believe it came from the Greeks. But the way that I remember this, I'm going to erase this so it doesn't distract us, is I remember this, whole, whole, half. I remember that there's 2 of them, and they're joined by a whole step in the middle. So until you have this internalized, this is how I would memorize this. Like, if this were an exam, this is like the formula I would remember. We got whole, whole, half, and they're joined together by a whole step. Okay, so now let me show you how we use this. So we're going to spell out, again, the key that we've been working on for the past 2 video lectures has been C major. So we're going to spell out C major, and I'm going to show you how to use this. And we'll do C major, we'll do G major, and maybe we'll do F major just so you can see this in action. And I would encourage you to do this for all keys, especially if you're someone who's really trying to understand music theory, because a lot of theory is it's just mechanical knowledge. Like, you just got to go through the motions enough times until you don't have to, if that makes sense. So okay, we'll start with C major. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our pen here on C. Now, if we follow our formula, the first thing we got to do is we got to go a whole step. So 1, 2. All right, so now we've got C, we've got D. All right, now we have to do another whole step. So 1, 2. Now we're at E. And again, the step, you can think of these as frets. So from D, we're going to jump 1 fret, 2 frets. Now we're at our first half step increment. So now we're going to go from E to F. All right. Now we have a whole step. So we're going to go F sharp to G. Then we have another whole step. We go to A. And then we have another whole step. B. And notice we go right back to C. There's our C major scale. All right, so what I would encourage you to do is pause this video and work through G major and maybe F major on your own. All right, so let's do G major. So first thing we do, we put our pencil on G, and now we're going to do a whole step. So we're going to go G to A. Now we're going to do another whole step to B. Now we have our first half step. So now we're at C. Whole step. We're at D. Whole step. E. So we're right here if you're following along. Now we got to do another whole step to F sharp. Now we have our last half step, which takes us right back to G. Cool beans, right? Pretty straightforward, pretty self-explanatory. I feel like a lot of the times this can be confusing at first, but I hope at least like the way that I really learned this and internalized this is I just did this a million times when I was in music school. Until I got where I had instant recall of all major scales, I did this. And then there are some tricks that you can do to get faster. Like if you study the circle of fifths, which I don't know if I want to do that on today's video because I feel like that should be its own 15-minute video in its own. But I would encourage you that if you want to study ahead, look into the circle of fifths and the circle of fourths, because you can pull, I still pull stuff from those two. All right, so let's go back to C major. So I'm gonna write it out like this: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay, so here's C major. Now I mentioned we're gonna talk about the modes. So I learned modes as a flautist, as a flute player. I played flute first. I picked up flute and guitar around the same time in 6th grade. So the way that I was taught modes was basically you're going to play from note to note in whatever the original key is. While that is true mechanically, that is not how I use them now as a composer. So that's why I want to dedicate a whole video to this. But I at least want to give you a little piece of nugget, because I know a lot of you guys are like, man, I've heard of modes, I just don't know what order they're in, etc. So I'm going to give you my little cheesy thing that I use. All right, so actually, let me erase C real quick. All right, here are the order of the modes. Okay. When I was in the military, we were really big on what we called ditties or acronyms or like stupid things that help you memorize complex things. So I'm going to give you my ditty for the modes. I do pot leave me alone Locrian. I don't have a better thing for Locrian outside of just this. Okay, so let's break this up. Ionian. This is major. This is like, this is the equivalent of like if you go to a restaurant and you ask for like spicy water, aka carbonated water. That's how people are when they say Ionian instead of major. Ionian and the major scale, same exact thing. So D, Dorian. P, Phrygian. L, leave, Lydian. M, Mixolydian. A, Aeolian. Locrian is Locrian. I don't, I don't have a better way of memorizing that. But that's your ditty. I do pot, leave me alone. All right, so now let me show you. If we're in terms of C major, you're going to go C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So, in C major, we have C major or C Ionian. We have D minor, or if you're going to play from D to D in the key of C major, you have Dorian. What I mean by that is like if you were to play D Dorian, you're going to go D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Versus if you were in D major, you'd have to go D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. This is why I said we're going to spend a whole like video lessons on each of the modes. But for now, I just at least want you to see this and get familiar with it. And hopefully this like clicks for some of y'all are like, oh, that's what that means. And I would encourage you too, if you remember on the first week, if this is the first video you're watching, I really recommend you go back to episode 1 and kind of work your way through, because the way I'm building things out is kind of how I would recommend any guitar player getting into theory kind of approach this. So what I would really recommend is that if you want to work ahead before I release the next video on each mode, I would take that map that you did of the fretboard of all of C major and figure out ways of playing from D to D in the key of C. So no accidentals, no flats or sharps. Because that's going to help you out in the coming lectures if you're following this along and you're studying as if these are like virtual lessons. So, but just because you play from D to D does not mean you're playing Dorian. There's so much more that goes into it that will cover it. It really merits its own thing, but I've just been getting asked a lot about modes and scales. So really the most important scale to know is your Ionian. Because if you know major, you know the rest of this. You just have to learn the nuances of how to get a Dorian flavor or how to get a Phrygian flavor or a Lydian flavor. But if you don't understand major and how to build chords diatonic, there's no way for me to really unlock modes for you. But with that in mind, we're going to switch up and I'm going to challenge you. Maybe depending on editing and how long this video is, I'll show you the guitar aspect of this too. But here is your homework for the week. Okay, so what I want you to do, if you're following along with these as if these are lessons, is I want you to learn C major. And if you can at least get 2 positions of play by next week, that'll be awesome. But really, this is like baseline. For my heavy achievers, really try to learn to play C major in 3 different positions. If you learn 8th position, you can play this in at least 2 octaves. Now, if you're like, positions, what is he talking about? Remember, that's where your pointer finger is. We covered this last week's lecture, so I would recommend you go back and study it. All right, I don't have my Tonemaster Pro or Axe Effects turned on, so I'm just going to do this with a nylon. Let me grab it and make sure it's in tune real quick. So, hopefully you will be able to hear everything all right, but the most important thing is to be able to see the fretboard. So the first thing I want you to work on is getting C major in what's called the open position. So for the open position, you're going to use your pointer finger is technically going to be resting on the nut, and the rest of your fingers are here. So you're not allowed to go past really the 4th fret. And I would really encourage you, yeah, we'll keep the 4th fret for the open. So what you need to do is start off on C, which is on the A string, 3rd fret of the A string, and learn how to go. Alright, so all that is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. All right, so learning how to play positionally is really important. I would also learn how to do it in the third position. And then for those who are going to do 3 positions of playing, I want you to focus on the 8th position. Okay? But most importantly, I don't want you to just learn this as if it's tablature. What I really want you to do is really take the time and spell out the fretboard and call out the notes. So whenever you're playing this, depending on what position you're at, what I have found to really help me learn this stuff is to be like 3C, 5D, open D, 2E, 3F, 5G. And like speaking that aloud has really allowed me to internalize this where I don't have to think about it anymore. I can just be like, and you can be like, oh, can you play a B there? Okay, which one? And if you want to see the major scale worked out, the whole half thing, do it on just the A string, which is what we talked about in the first lesson. So go, C, okay, whole, half, whole, half. And you'll know that's... And it's cool because you can see it linear on each string. Because, we don't play the piano. That is the beauty and the curse of guitar. The beauty is that we have, 3 ways that we can play the same thing. The curse is that we have 3 ways we can play the same thing. So it's not like piano where it's so linear and it's like, yes, this is probably the most efficient way of playing this. On guitar, it's really like finding your route to get to wherever you want to go. But if you start here, this is a beautiful place for you to really get your feet wet and dive in deep into the world of guitar and music theory. So I'm going to end the video there so this doesn't go on for too much longer. If you enjoyed today's video, I would love for you to give me a summary of everything you learned in the comment section. Let me know at least one thing you're grateful for. And the last thing is to do all the YouTube stuff to really help me grow. My goal is to hit over 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and only you can help me do that. So thank you. Only you can prevent forest fires. Remember, Smokey the Bear says to follow me, subscribe, and share this out on all social media so I can continue to grow and do this full time. So I really do appreciate you guys. If you're interested in studying with me one-on-one, please reach out to me at Damien Andy on Instagram or the Guitar Artistry program on Instagram. That is my business that I am working really hard to build, so I would greatly appreciate the opportunity to win your business. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.